Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Digital Dealer webinar. Today's webinar is sponsored by OfferUp and is titled, How to Overcome Inventory Scarcity and Win This Tax Season. Our presenters today are Alexander Hoff, Senior Manager of OfferUp Motors, and Eric Schlesinger, Chief Revenue Officer at ActiveEngage. This webinar will run for about 1 hour, including a question and answer session at the end, so be sure to use the Q&A panel to enter your questions for our speakers throughout the event. And now, please welcome our presenters, Alexander and Eric.
All right, thank you everybody.
Good afternoon.
All right, so we'll start out with some more detailed introductions. Like Skylar just introduced us. My name is Alexander. I had a revenue strategy over at OfferUp, and the main thing I've been working on over the past couple of years has been the changing consumer experience, which is what we're going to be talking about today, and that's largely impacting how dealers are relating to the customers and what those initial contact points are. So, Eric, do you want to give a quick bio on yourself, and then we'll get going?
I am the Chief Revenue Officer of ActiveEngage. As many know, ActiveEngage is managed services, specifically messaging, and specifically for the automotive industry. I am also an ex-dealer. I did grow up inside of the retail side of the business, spent 15 years on that side before the vendor side.
Awesome. So, Skylar, if you can put up the first poll, we're just going to start out with everybody that's on the call. If you can answer this question: if you have acquired inventory in this inventory scarcity so far from a marketplace, and what we mean by marketplace is something that is meant to be more peer-to-peer, like a Facebook marketplace or an OfferUp or a Craigslist, something like that.
You know, it was interesting, Hop, in regards to this question. Like, I was actually visiting a buddy of mine, a GM, the other day at a Chevy store, and I asked him just this exact question, and he hired somebody specifically whose entire job it is to sit there and scour the OfferUps, the other types of marketplaces that are out there to try to acquire inventory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's become a really big sticking point for all sorts of dealerships, that they're going directly to the private party and being more aggressive with it. Not necessarily trade-in. I mean, I work with dealerships that are actively putting out ads to acquire inventory for cash offers rather than even looking to sell the car right off the bat. So
yeah,
cool. So it looks like everybody here has bought a car off of a marketplace as an inventory source. So that's good. Great. There we go. Okay, so today's webinar, we're going to run it a little bit differently than you might have seen OfferUp post them in the past through Digital Dealer. We're going to run this more in a podcast style. I brought Eric on because he's a longtime veteran of the industry, and with his insights at ActiveEngage, he really has he's been in the trenches with how consumer behaviors are changing and what dealers are having to do to adapt to that. So the focal point of what we're going to discuss, obviously the inventory scarcity and how that's really impacted the modern car buying experience. I don't think it's any secret that, you know, used car prices are up, what is it, 38% from last year, 50%?
40% was what I heard this morning.
Yeah. And so dealerships, we almost have the luxury of not having to now sell on price, which also means that it's a little bit different of an experience and what the role of the dealership plays. So we're going to talk about how you can use that scarcity to your advantage, along with kind of transitioning how you think about the dealer role in the car buying experience. So here are the main questions at OfferUp that we get. And so, Eric, I'm just going to ask, kind of going down the list one by one, what you've been hearing from your contacts around the industry. One, is it here to stay? Like, when is this used car scarcity, the new car scarcity, going to finally end? I mean, I've seen data saying
I don't think it's
couple of
going
years.
to.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you have the model is already kind of there with like the Tesla model aspect of things from the standpoint of a just-in-time inventory and the car being built, for the consumer exactly the way it is they want. And now you're in a situation where if somebody can wait, if it's not that they got into a car accident, their car was totaled and have to get a new car, they can extend their lease a couple of months. What you're going to end up finding is that the consumer themselves is going to be more apt to going and ordering the car and building it exactly the way that they want, as opposed to walking the lot and trying to find the vehicle that's gonna get close to.
Yeah, that's kind of like the closest match of what I had conceptually thought up in my head.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got all these other things. I mean, it's like, here's, automotive news from last week's, I think, talking about the chip shortage right on the cover. And now you got the whole thing going on with the truckers in Canada blocking the border. And all of the main manufacturers, Honda, Toyota, GM, Stellantis, Ford, have already said that they have to slow down production. I think Ford's like idling plants for a week to see if it does, so they can start to get inventory back in. But the dealers at the same time, I mean, have adapted, and leave it to car dealers to adapt quickly, right? But I mean, they've adapted unbelievably quickly to what is now kind of the norm. I mean, it's like I talk to friends of mine that are dealers and, asking them how they're doing and stuff. And they're like, we're doing great. I sold 300 Toyotas last month out of my 3 stores, and I don't have a single car on the ground.
I never thought I'd hear that, but you're right. It's especially for new car sales, it's become almost order taking.
But it's obviously it's then feeding into the demand for the used cars as well, and then you have the whole. I mean, listen, you even have rental car agencies at this point in time that are trying to source inventory any way that they can, because when the pandemic first started, what was it? I mean, I thought the bottom was going to fall out in, what was it, like April, May, June of 2020, when Hertz had to unload 500,000 vehicles.
Yep.
Then you start hearing horror stories about people renting rider trucks in Hawaii, because they can't get a rental car.
So from the customer experience, then, I've seen this, especially, it's more, I wouldn't say hesitant, but it's more delayed. It's like the research and the patience is there from the customer. It's not a rush to get something while it's still on the lot, like you were talking about. So how would you say that's impacting the dealer side of things? I mean, new cars, it's easier to take these orders and have a backlog almost. But how do you recommend that dealerships that only deal with pre-owned?
On the pre-owned, on the pre-owned side, it's becoming, well, one, if they have the inventory and they're able to get it, I mean, having it out there for people to be able to find it in marketplaces is going to be an important thing, so that a consumer, can find the vehicle that they're interested in. I mean, that's going to be a really, really important piece. You're not, I don't think that we're going to be seeing, we haven't been seeing as many consumers just walking onto a dealership lot, kicking tires like they once did. They're focused. They're focused on finding that vehicle that they're interested in. Now, the interesting part that we're obviously all seeing, and it's a product, of the scarcity of the inventory, is obviously pricing. When you've got vehicles that are 2 years old priced higher than the MSRP on a brand new one because it's available, well, but the interesting thing that's also happening is that the consumer's becoming more accepting of the fact of, like, okay, this is the price of the car. And not being like, well, I'm going to go down the street and I'm going to go talk to that guy because he's got one also. And, oh, no, wait, I'll save you $500. It's like, the dealer's now somewhat more in the position of like, listen, I just want to create the best experience for you. They're good dealers. And so the consumer also is now going to have the ability to find the store that's going to be able to offer them the best experience. It's not about, it's as crazy as it sounds. I mean, it's not about getting the best deal. It's about feeling the best.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you that these past 18 to 24 months have almost acted like a catalyst to where no haggle pricing is the norm. consumers are walking in just assuming that, hey, this price is the price, just like when I buy a gallon of milk,
Right.
when I go to Kroger or Publix. And so on this slide, I put this 80% just to put in some humor here, but it really does show the expectation historically that people have when they go in and they visit a dealership. And so this was a poll, I think it was early 2020, maybe late 2019, where millennials were given the option of a few different things. What would you rather do? 44% said, hey, I'd rather go and get a root canal than have to go into a dealership in person and buy a car.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I cracked up when I read this yesterday, just by the way, because I've been using the line, people would rather go to a blind dentist and have their teeth cleaned rather than walk into a car dealership. And so the fact that there's actually a statistic on it, I died yesterday when I read that.
So when we're looking at this new buyer persona, and this is what I've been focused on for the past 18 months, it's a younger generation. I mean, I think the exact percentage is about 32% of car sales right now are going to millennials, but they're predicting 75% by 2025 are going to be millennials and Gen Z. So these younger generations that are very technology driven, and like you see on the screen, the familiar and the frictionless experience. That's really what you were talking about with the customer experience, where the role of the dealership, it's not as much sales oriented as it is customer experience. And so the second point here is the control of the communication. I'll let you go on kind of how you see consumers and the modern car buyer. How have you seen those conversations? Because you get thousands a week, I'm sure, through your platform. How have you seen those change over the past 24 months?
They've changed a lot. It's interesting, and you're right. The whole millennial thing's an interesting one. I remember talking, or probably 3, 4, 5 months into the pandemic, and when things were still a little bit iffy and everybody wasn't really sure what was happening. I did like a similar poll. We were walking around Denver or something, and went and and it was somebody who lived in the city, and I asked them. I said, "Do you own a car?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Well, what are you planning?" She's like, "I'm trying to buy a car as soon as it is that I possibly can." I'm like, "Really? Why?" She's like, "I don't want to be riding buses, and I don't want to be going on like subways and stuff like that with other people." That's a
really good point. Yeah. We had some similar data. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the health and the safety part of it is just another layer to kind of the external effects of why the used car demand has boomed so much. That brings top of mind. We saw throughout the pandemic a lot of people migrating out of urban areas, which is another external factor of why people needed cars. Because if you move out to the suburbs, 30 minutes away from downtown, where I actually did the same thing. I was 7 minutes from a downtown metro major city, and now I'm about 30 minutes without traffic. But public transportation, that's not an option anymore. So I need a car. Right. And so oftentimes it was the first car that, a lot of my personal friends who are millennials were buying, in their early 30s.
Right. And so it really did drive, that need. And, but to the question on how the conversations have changed and everything, one of the things that we've seen is, through chat and text pre-pandemic on the sales side of things, the conversations that we saw on an ongoing basis, first off, they were about 9 minutes long on a managed, like when we're managing it on behalf of the dealer.
Pre-pandemic?
Pre-pandemic.
Okay.
And what we ended up, and they were very, like, not, when is that the right word? The questions or the conversations were very just like direct. It was like,
Deliberate
do you
question,
have this? What's your best price? Those types of things. And, all of a sudden getting into the summer of 2020, we started to see a dynamic shift where, one, the conversations became much longer, and they were all of a sudden, almost doubling in length. The other thing that they did is they became much more human, where there was more of a human factor, more of a desire to create a relationship on both sides, because they may have just been locked in their house for the last however long, right? Mm-hmm. And haven't like seen people or interacted. So the conversation that they're now having about a new car is creating more excitement. It's getting there, but now they're asking questions like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you safe? And so we saw a real dynamic shift into what I've been calling the human element, the human factor of buying a car. And I think it also goes into, as much as it is that we have all of this incredible technology and stuff like that now, the ability to, for instance, do digital retailing, the part that all of a sudden also got realized through the pandemic, because I think going into it, there's all this, talk about AI and bots and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, the human factor, the human element, oh, wait a minute, people buy cars from people, comes back into it.
Shocker.
Right. So we saw that too. And we really saw the aspect of, the fact that, like, for instance, us, like, we're always 100% a human capital company and stuff like that. But we've been able to help the dealers to create that initial relationship with the consumer. And that was the part that also became really, really important, because in many ways, there wasn't going to be that customer coming in and walking into the dealership physically. I mean, you guys, as an example,
at least not early in the buying process,
right,
to window shop, whatever you want to call it. So my question to you is, because I can't believe we're still talking about a pandemic 2 years later and kind of what it's done to this industry. Is that human interaction via chat, via whatever form of communication, is that here to stay? Or do you think it's going to be acceptable to go back to using bots and conversational AI?
I don't think so. I really don't. And I think it's going to become, more human factor aspects of things. As you see, messaging becoming more and more also an integrated part of, digital retailing tools. Like, we've gone and created relationships with 5, 6, 7 of the larger, DR tools that are out there, because what the dealers are again coming to realize, those consumers, like the millennials you talked about, want to have that frictionless transaction and to make it as easy as possible. But the part that everybody keeps forgetting about sticking, what I tend to call the fancy calculator on the website, is that car deals are complicated. They are not easy.
Yeah.
And you need that human factor to be able to, to figure it out. It's like, if you're talking about new cars, I mean, well, there's, however many different ways to come up with a number to put on a lease. I mean, is it 36 months, 39, 42, 10,000, 12,000 miles? All of these crazy nuances that, to create that experience, to create that best consumer experience, people have to be involved. I mean, at least in, I think, our lifetime.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point on what you're talking about with the pricing calculator tools. They're great as tools to allow your customer base to acquire preliminary information.
Right.
But no customer expects that, okay, I went on the AutoNation website, it said that my Jeep was going to be $459 a month. I go in and find out my credit is, or my auto credit, because not many people know there's auto credit, is 20 points below what I thought my credit score was, so it changes my rate. So I think it's also a big thing on, where these consumers are in the sales process. So I wanted to bring up this, and of course we can only show snapshots of what the experience is like on OfferUp, but you can do the same thing on Craigslist, on Google search, on Bing. But essentially what car buyers are doing now on the early top of the funnel stages when they're searching for vehicles is, especially because of the inventory scarcity, is they're getting alerts, they're getting push notifications, text notifications, emails every time a new car that fits their preferred criteria is listed on Car Gurus and a number of other websites. And so when they finally interact with a dealership, they already know what they're going to buy. They know exactly what they want. And oftentimes the consumer knows more about the vehicle than the sales rep at the dealership, has been my experience. So I think what you're talking about in terms of being further down the funnel, that's why we require the human element.
Yeah.
Because the way I look at bots, for customer service and small things, I think they have their place. But really, if you've got a customer that has done this level of research. They know exactly the car, they found the car on your lot, or they see that you might be able to help them order one, and they start to chat with you, making them go through that friction. And remember, they're frictionless. They love frictionless familiar experiences, making them go through that friction just to fill out a form with their PII information. From what I hear from some of our other partners that do chat, it's 9 out of 10, you lose that customer if that's your experience, because you're creating more friction for the same end result of filling out a form.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, it's almost like for those people who are looking for a very, very specific vehicle and they're going to do more research. They're going to know more about it. They are absolutely going to end up doing as much research as they can before they know exactly what it is that they want. And in many ways, it's almost, getting the alert aspect. Look, this 2017 Jeep Wrangler just became available. If you live in a hot housing market, it's almost the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of the advantages that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, is how dealerships, like we said, the price is no longer the sticking point. You can be patient with not accepting the first offer on a vehicle. And you can use those conversations and the volume to tell you, hey, I feel like I overpriced this vehicle because everything feels overpriced just with, historical averages. But if you get 20 hits on something that, you price 40% above what you would have a year ago, you could have priced it even higher.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So Skylar, we're going to do our last poll here. And so this question is meant to get our audience thinking about what is the role of the dealership. So is a sales pitch needed for today's car buyer? Give it about 5 more seconds. Well, I'm actually surprised as many people as they did said no. So you and I talked about this, Eric, on the role of the dealership, and your company has, in my opinion, kind of mastered this first 20 seconds of engaging with a consumer. And we just talked about, 8 out of 10, I think it's closer to 9 out of 10 car buyers already know what they're looking for. So how do you train your agents? How would you, for a dealership that doesn't have a managed chat partner like ActiveEngage or some of the other big players in the space, how would you advise them to, start nurturing that relationship in the first 20 seconds?
What we advise, there's a bunch of different things that we advise the dealers to really do. One obviously is listen to the question that's being asked. There's a commercial out right now that I've heard. It's for Ruby receptionists. They've been a phone answering company for a long time, and they're now managing chat for businesses. And the experience that the woman in the commercial is, she drops her hard drive into a bathtub or something like that, and so she goes on to, I guess, and asks, do you repair hard drives? It sounds like you're having a problem. How can I help you? By reading the question that I just asked you. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. How can I help you? And the iteration of that exact thing goes on for a couple more segments, and then she just gets so frustrated. And so that the listening part, the not making an assumption, also don't be salesy in it. You have to remember that, like Hoff said, the consumer, they know what they want already. Now it's all about creating empathy. Now it's all about creating a relationship with them, getting them excited, thinking about the fact and remembering the aspect that, an automobile purchase in this country is the single largest emotional purchase that any of us, happen to make. Regardless of what anybody thinks, we look at that car that you're driving as an extension of our own personality. It says something. Yeah. It says something about us, and it's the reason, like, when we all learned to sell cars, then we used to have cars on a lot to show, that when that customer walked in the store thinking that they were interested in buying that silver LX Accord, that as a salesperson, we walk them past as many other vehicles as we possibly can, because more than likely on our way to that silver Accord, they're going to go, well, wait a minute, what about that one? That red two-door coupe right there. I want that one. So we need to keep these types of things that we want to get the customer, we want them excited. We want to get them, making them feel good that we're here to help them, that we're not simply trying to just, get their information. And that's another really important piece, is that if you do this the right way, and if you have the conversation the right way, it's not simply going and saying, well, what's your phone number? Let me call you. It'll be a lot easier if we talk on the phone. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Realize that they're engaging in a chat conversation, a messaging conversation, because that's the way in which they want to communicate at this moment in time. And it's really important to recognize that.
And there is, from the consumer standpoint, there's a level of anonymity that feels comfortable. Like I can converse with you. I can test the waters with your dealership and ask you a couple questions before I feel comfortable, like you said, giving my contact information to then go further in the buying process. So I think it's a different perspective for dealers, especially today, where you almost have to earn the right to get the contact information, when the norm has been for so long to fill out a form and we'll give you a call and we'll send you follow-up emails.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a really, really, important piece to remember, is that the consumer, they're somewhat in control right now. And it's important, the building of the relationship part is almost the most important thing. So if a customer asks, hey, how long is the Chevy Silverado that I'm looking at? I want to make sure it's going to fit in my garage before I come down and test drive the car.
Yep.
Answer that question. If you have the capabilities to look it up quickly and stuff like that, answer it. But then when you answer it, don't just leave it alone. Then use that as an opportunity to start to ask additional types of questions, like, are you interested in leasing or financing, or are there any particular options that are of interest to you? What's your purchase time frame? And as you're, and don't do it exactly like that. I mean, you have to put it into some better words and stuff. But
don't just conduct an interview via chat.
Make sure that you're also, like, we've learned other things over the years. I mean, we've learned, as an example, that it's okay and actually good to misspell certain words every once in a while. But the words that you misspell are also really, really important. You don't want to misspell Camry or AutoNation, but misspelling the word the or and, it all of a sudden shows the consumer that you're a real person, that you're not a bot. I think I was telling you yesterday, we do get the question, not as much anymore. Well, it's starting to come back again because there are more bots now. But the question of asking, it's like, are you a real human? And I saw a response yesterday from one of our, what we call our chat agents, our customer engagement experts, for C's. So I saw one the other day and said, yeah, I'm 99% human, 1% coffee, dark roast to be exact. And just little things like that, don't just be human in it. And if you're able to do that and like really have the conversation, when you do go to ask the customer for contact information to be able to, take it to the next step, you'll find that they become not only willing, but very eager to give it to you.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more than that. So one thing I want to discuss with you is rapport. And I say true rapport here because I'm going to get on my pedestal and kind of preach here for a second. But I think rapport is commonly misunderstood. And it's commonly thought of as, okay, Eric, you and I, we just met at a cocktail hour at NADA. And, we've been talking for 5 minutes. Clearly, we have rapport now because we're able to have friendly conversation. But that doesn't really help in the virtual customer service or sales role, because it's hard to pinpoint then when do I have rapport? Because rapport is when you're going to have the permission to ask for contact information. Rapport is when you're going to move forward in the buying process.
Very, very true.
So what we found, obviously none of the above is is rapport, because even scheduling an appointment, you could get somebody that eager in today's market that's like, yep, schedule an appointment, I'll be there at 4 p.m. today. And so this, I'm not going to bore everybody and read directly off the screen, but I saw this definition of what rapport is, and I thought it broke it down to a level to where if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I can have a distinct point in time and know that I've either built rapport or I haven't. And it's being able to say, okay, what is motivating the person I'm talking to in the scenario that we're talking about, and this one being buying a new car, and can I adequately say that back to them? And so it's something very simple that via chat, to make it more human, like you were talking about, why are they interested in the vehicle that they are, whether it be a truck, whether it be an SUV, and then why are they motivated to do it now? I'm going to use myself as an example because I started a side business late last year for woodworking, and so I'm in the market for a truck. And obviously GMC has none on the lot, Toyota has none on the lot, but I went in and met with one of the sales reps at Toyota, and he followed this model, and I had only been thinking about it for a couple of weeks. And I was very impressed that he had the forethought to ask me, why are you getting a truck now? Because, it's going to be difficult to get, but why now? And I told him, hey, I'm starting a business. He's like, so you probably don't want a short bed. I was like, no, you're right. I need a standard bed, but I still want a crew max. He's like, well, that's going to be really hard to come by. But the fact that he had the forethought to ask, why are you buying now, and what is it going to be used for? It's two very simple questions that, if that's your blueprint for a chat, it really helps open up the customer.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because we even train our own staff, our Cs, to ask specific types of questions like that in conversations. And a lot of times you'll end up getting somebody, oh, well, I was just involved in a car accident, and then right there, even it's really, really, really important to then recognize that, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry to hear about that. I hope that everything's okay. And, to your point, all of a sudden you're on that deeper level where you're recognizing a situation, or, why are you buying a minivan? Oh, well, I'm having twins. It's like, oh, congratulations. That's so
Yep.
exciting, and making sure that you recognize, and not only recognize it, but use it and to again create that rapport with that consumer, and to be able to present back to them with just that.
Yeah, I apologize. I thought I had another slide here. But the thing that we're talking about, true rapport, whatever you want to call it, what it leads to is trust-based influence. Because now, like you were saying, you're on the same side of the table as the customer, and they trust your consultation. So I think it's really important for dealerships to think about the role of the dealer has flipped from selling a car and winning their attention to, you got their attention for a reason because they found something online that they liked about your dealership. Now you have to keep it. You're not trying to win it as much as you are keep it and earn the trust-based influence to do business with that customer.
Yep, very much so.
So this is one of the last things that we were going to talk about. And I know that your team provides a immense amount of data to your dealerships. And so how in the age of big data, in the age of being human in a virtual capacity, how do you then synthesize that down and use data to your advantage? What data should dealerships be looking at? I mean, it really is overwhelming if you don't know where to start. Yeah,
I mean, there's, on the sales side specifically, one of the things that you're able to hone in on is, what's of interest, what's in market, what are consumers looking for, what types of vehicles are they looking for, or SUVs, are they looking for pickup trucks, are they looking for, sedans, hybrids, plugins. So you can mine, the chat conversations to be able to see the types of questions that are being asked. I mean, we've had some OEMs that take the data and have built entire data lakes, and to be able to sit there and to look at conversations and to be able to almost get into the mindset of the consumer. The other really cool part, this is going back years ago, but I mean, we have the ability to provide information and so forth almost in a real-time factor. And I think back to, and this is going back a really long time ago, 10, 11 years ago, when Toyota had the problem with the Camry and the brake. And we were able to provide back to Toyota in almost a real-time format the types of questions that consumers were asking about the recall. And so that they then in turn could take that information and go update their own call centers and how their call centers were, answering certain types of questions, instead of having to wait the 4 to 6 weeks for like a Forrester research to go out and do, polling on the consumers to see what it is that they're asking for. And dealers can do this, in the same way. Are they asking about COVID restrictions? Are they asking about, how long is it? Like right now, I know that a lot of dealerships are having, situations with service and parts. I mean, I personally just went through it. I have a rather new vehicle, and the computer went dead in it, and then my car sat in the shop for 33 days because they couldn't get the part that they needed, and because of supply chain. So you're able to see those types. Where are they communicating from? What channels are they coming in from? Are they coming in from your website? Are they coming in via SMS? Are they coming in, from an OfferUp, through a Google My Business, through Messenger, through any of these other types of platforms, an Auto Trader or cars? I mean, so you can really see how you're getting noticed. If you're doing like Google paid listings, you can have that attached to to messaging now too, and you can see if a customer is actually clicking on that. I mean, so all of this data can show you the mindset. When are consumers messaging in? Is it during the day? Is it at night? I mean, all different types of communication methods. And so now you can also take that information to see, maybe I'm better putting more advertising dollars into placing ads and promoting my vehicles to a higher standard on OfferUp. Maybe I'm better going and placing, different things and doing different ads in this location. One of the things that I encourage all my dealers to do, I don't know how many of them actually do it, but we've all gotten really used to QR codes, right? I mean, so over the last 2 years, who would have ever thought about QR codes or all of a sudden becoming the menu of choice? But to convert that SMS-enabled phone number into a QR code, and to put that QR code on all of your inventory, so that in the instance, if a customer happens to be walking in the lot, when the dealership is closed, they still have a way to communicate. All they have to do, QR code, I can scan that. I'm really used to doing that. And have it launched directly.
I think you made a couple of great points, and so I'm going to synthesize it down. One, let me back up. One, I know that we've been talking a lot about chat, but I want to make it clear, like, you can use the data from all different modes of communication. It just happens to be chat is your main business. It's the foundational feature of OfferUp. So that's kind of where we naturally go with our conversations.
Right.
And it is the preferred method of communication for the modern car buyer. But using the data that comes from that and the response back that comes from your buyers to then dictate, okay, what am I going to go get at auction, or what am I going to look for on OfferUp or Craigslist or from direct private sellers? Right. Because in an inventory scarcity, all this time, it's not just the dealership that has to spend more time sourcing vehicles, but also the consumer. They're spending 3, 4, 5 times as long just to find a car that kind of fits the mold of what they're looking for in the pre-owned market. And so what I've started to see, and this goes back to these two questions, is that I've got a handful of dealerships that I work with, and they've been working off this model. And if they find that, okay, they engage with us, I'm going to use your example from earlier on a minivan, right? They're about to have twins, but hey, maybe the mileage was too high and we don't have a car on the lot. What they've started to do is, okay, give me your ideal car, and we're going to go to work and be a consultant and be on your side and go try and source that car for you. Yep. Which I realized that's what new car franchises have been doing. They're just taking orders. And so you've got this opportunity for the used car market, for the dealerships that understand, hey, my role is changing from sales forward to customer service forward, more consultant forward. Those that are willing to kind of pivot and make that move, they are earning a lot more business because from this model and kind of earning that trust-based influence, what we're seeing is customers are willing to spend 15% more on average on a vehicle just because they like the experience and they appreciate what you're doing for them. So
yeah, it's pretty, yes. And I mean, it goes back. I mean, when I was in retail and stuff like that, and obviously this is going back, wow, a long time ago now. We had a department inside of my organization where we call it personal fleet services, and it was almost just that, where we had, I had, I think, 2 other people that worked with me, and this is what I like was first, and we would do just this. We like, tell us what your ideal car is and let us go to work for you and let us find it for you. And it was creating that concierge level of service almost. And
yes.
I've spoken enough to, friends who are GMs and stuff like that. And I've asked, like, I had a conversation with one very large BMW store up in Boston, and I'm like, what are you doing like now? How many? He's like, I got 15 cars on the ground. I said, okay. He's like, I'm using them as test drive vehicles. And then we go and, once the consumer decides that they want the 440 or the 535, then we go and we sit down with them as a consultant and we build them their car. And they're like, yeah. And they don't ask about pricing anymore. They understand that the price is the price, and they order their car, and 12 weeks later, they pick up their ideal car.
Yeah. I mean, that creates a unique and meaningful experience in the car buying journey that simply hasn't existed at scale before.
Yeah.
And this technology, whether it's chat or whatever your mode of communication is, technology today gives you access to do that. Whether you're a dealership with three cars on the lot or 300 cars on the lot, you can offer that, like you said, concierge service, which also does another couple things. Gives you the right to ask for their PII information so you can keep in touch, and also a reason to call them back.
Right.
So, and they're not in fear seeing a number that they don't recognize. They might even save your number on their phone. Cool. Well, this is really good stuff. I think we are at the end here and are now on our Q&A section.
Great. Now let's start the Q&A session. A reminder to the audience, please continue to enter your questions into the Q&A panel. So our first one here says, how can you search for low-priced private sale cars?
I guess I can take that first one. It's really easy to go onto, like I was talking about before in the presentation, Google, OfferUp. We have this, we call it search alert, where it'll send you push notifications, but you can essentially put in all the filters and say, I want sedans that are less than 20 years old, less than 100,000 miles, that are priced below X amount. And you'll get a push notification every time a new one is posted within your local radius. So it's really easy. I mean, Car Gurus, Auto Trade, they all have tools like this where you can set up search alerts. But as far as doing it from a private seller, you have to go to these peer-to-peer marketplaces. Like Facebook Marketplace has been great for a lot of dealerships I work with. It is noisy, so it takes a little bit more effort, but there is gold in there. What are your thoughts, Eric?
No, I mean, I totally agree. I think, at some point in time, someone's going to figure out how to automate this and go to search like all of the different ones. I talked with the one friend who is trying to do something like that at a different company. But I think that you're going to see more and more of the aspect of trying to source vehicles from private sellers versus going to the auctions as well. Obviously when you go to the auction now, you're paying premiums because it's just crazy and everybody's bidding up the cars, but then you got to pay transportation fees, you got to pay the auction fees. Mm-hmm. So it's almost easier to start to source vehicles in that particular way through the third-party listings, whether it's for lower priced ones or any of them for that matter. I think we're going to see a shift in the business in general, that's going to become more and more of a way that dealers are going to be acquiring vehicles and not as much going to the auctions anymore. In fact, actually spoke to my friend. He works for a very, very large dealer group. He's a general manager. He's not allowed to go to the auction.
Interesting. So that begs the question, the picture you're painting of the future, what role do auctions have? Is it going to be marginal, or do you think they're going to continue to play a big role in the automotive ecosystem?
I think they'll still end up having a pretty decent size role. But I also do believe that you're going to see smart operators start operating more in this aspect of sourcing the vehicles that I need and want. Because like you said, a smart operator is going to be able to create that relationship with that consumer, tell me exactly what it is that you want. Now, all of a sudden, that person that wants that minivan really wants a 2018, Toyota Sienna, has to be all-wheel drive because they live in Colorado. They want it to have, less than a certain amount of mileage, and they want it to be an XLE. Well, as that Toyota dealer, I can now go and try to source that specific vehicle. If I go to the auction, it's going to be very difficult because I only have access to whatever's there. But if I now start to go and to do a search, for a 25-mile radius around my store, likelihood is I'm going to probably be able to find one that's for sale.
So that brings up a good point, because on OfferUp, our default radius for our passenger cars, trucks, SUVs category is 80 miles. But we have some people searching nationwide. So do you see dealerships, maybe you have friends that are GMs that are already doing this, but searching nationwide and then providing the shipping, the freight logistics? I mean, that kind of seems like the next step going beyond just your local community.
I haven't seen it from the standpoint of sourcing. Obviously on the sales side, yes. I mean, I'm a perfect example.
Yes.
I just ordered a car for my wife and replacing hers, and I ordered it from, a friend in Philly. And so when it comes in this summer, I'll get it shipped. So I do see that. I don't know of any dealers that have aggressively started to do that, unless it's obviously for a very specialty car. And then that's a whole nother story.
Yes. And that's going to always been the case of having to source especially collector vehicles.
Yeah.
Cool.
Our next one here says, what do you recommend for lowball offers?
I mean, it's really one of those things that you have to, in a subtle way, whether it's on the phone or in person or via messaging, you're going to have to, in a very subtle / educational way, kind of explain to that consumer reality. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's if they really are giving you a lowball offer, more than likely they're somewhat living under a rock, also, and haven't seen all of the indicators of what's going on with vehicle prices and inventory, and it's just, it's a crazy time. Never in my lifetime did I ever think. I've been through the aspects of 9/11, and then throughout the financial, what took place right after 9/11, and the automotive industry, or 2008, 2009, and cash for clunkers, and nothing compares to this. But in a positive way. This has, where those two things were around negative things that have taken place. So I guess the pandemic is a little bit negative too, but this has dynamically changed the way that both the consumer and the dealer work inside of buying and selling cars. And did I at any point in time believe that, in 5, 10, 15 years from now, that this would have been what we're doing? Yeah, eventually. Did I think that it was going to happen inside of about a 6-month period of time, starting in, April, May of 2020? I don't think anybody could have predicted that.
Yeah, I completely agree with Eric. I think the lowball offers are becoming more and more rare. And so what I would add to that is, if you get a lowball offer, chances are they kind of know what's going on. It's just their way of breaking the barrier of communication. And we see that all the time. A common one is, hi, is this still available? which
Yep.
today is a really good question.
Yeah.
But in normal times, I mean, yeah, it's on my website. It's available. And so it's really, it's using that human element to nurture the conversation. And like you were talking about, Eric, empathy to kind of break down the barriers of the consumer. Because
Yeah,
a
I mean,
lowball
it's
offer
also
could just be, this is how I'm going to enter the conversation.
right. And it's also, I mean, having to really remember that there have been, over years and years and years, the consumer has, has it in their head of what it's like to go and buy a car. And, we all learn when we're going to buy our first car and stuff like that, our uncle, our, brother or neighbor is like, oh, I can go negotiate with a car dealer better than anybody else. Take me with you, and is, and everybody feels like you said earlier, it's like, I'd rather go to a blind dentist and have my teeth cleaned than go to a car dealer. So that perception from the consumer to the dealer part still has to be recognized somewhat from the dealer, and
Yep.
that it is still changing, but I don't think anybody expected it to change as quickly as it did.
Yeah, I would definitely say that no haggle pricing and consumers not even questioning the price you put in front of them is widely the norm already.
Listen, my mom went and ordered a car and she's like, so what do I say about price? I'm like, as long as they're charging you the price on the window, just be happy. She's like, seriously? I'm like, seriously.
Our next one here says, how has inventory scarcity impacted OfferUp's marketplace?
Great question. Pretty much like the rest of the industry. And so I'll synthesize it down to, there is less of it. Like, we're finding private car owners are holding on to their cars longer because it's more expensive to break into the market. But what we're seeing on the dealership side is that, yes, they've got constricted inventory, but we still have inflated demand. I mean, we're coming up on tax season. You've got the pent up demand from the pandemic. So they're getting 4 or 5x the amount of chats and calls on a specific vehicle than they were pre-pandemic. So as a marketplace, I would say there is just as much, if not more, buyer interest on a limited inventory scarcity supply. So if that concisely answers the question, it's you're going to get a lot more hits on fewer vehicles or on a single listing than you were before, which means that you have to have a strategy to keep up with it. Which is why over the past 12, 18 months, I've worked closely with companies like ActiveEngage so that we can build out these integrations and take that front end chat nurturing of each prospective buyer off the hands of the dealerships. Because I mean, we hear this all the time. There is always something more important happening right in front of you at the dealership than chatting or texting back a prospective buyer that may or may not buy a vehicle. There's always something more important happening at a dealership. So finding somebody that can help you nurture those conversations and then just pass along the most serious buyers it is a huge value proposition for dealerships and the customer.
Absolutely.
Great. Those appear to be all the questions that we have for now. Do you guys have any closing comments before we wrap up today's webinar?
No, I mean, first and foremost, obviously, not a bad time to be in the car business. Could be a lot worse. But obviously, thank you, for joining us, and obviously, Hoff, thanks for inviting me. I know, this was good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you. I know I kind of flagged you down late notice. So I appreciate you jumping on. And I always love hearing from industry experts because, I would not consider myself a veteran of the industry yet, even though I've been in the thick of it for a while now. So yeah, I appreciate everybody joining us. It is kind of an interesting time coming up on tax season with this inventory scarcity, but I hope the main takeaway that dealerships get from this is that you can use it to your advantage.
Absolutely.
You can create lifetime customers, and I've seen dealerships create phenomenal referral bases with using this blueprint of more of a customer experience role, but also maximizing profit margin because you don't have to take the first offer.
Nope. No, I mean, it very much is like buying and selling houses at this moment in time.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and thank you to Alexander and Eric for the great presentation. To view this webinar on demand and future Digital Dealer webinars, please visit digitaldealer.com/webinars. Once again, thank you and have a great day.